we're going to cover just two things. There are subcomponents, but I want you to understand, and I want to explain, I should say, who's who in the race, and then what you would expect if you were to step up and potentially get involved in three roles in particular, being a start referee. The word referee sounds very demanding. It's not, but a start referee, a gate judge. Again, the word judge is a bit intimidating for people, but a gate judge, and then a finish referee. And there are also some other very simple roles which you can get involved in as well. So that's the thrust of the evening. If I can get it to click in, we're going to start with a blank piece of paper, which is always a good place to start, and just work up the picture piece by piece. So for any race you've been to or any race you're going to go to, the first people who are going to be involved in the organization of that is someone known as the chief of race, and they will appoint someone as a secretary who will do a lot of the administration around it. The chief of race has overall responsibility for the event, and their first job when organizing it is to set a date with the ski center and arrange what resources are going to come from the ski center. So they might, for example, arrange free lift tickets for the volunteers so that people who do step up get a free lift pass for the day. But clearly they need to also organize what piste is going to be used, the fact that they want them to put up netting, they might want them to build a start ramp. So the job of the ski center, if you like, is to do precisely that: piste the slope, get some netting up, and build a start ramp. If they've done that and produced some lift tickets, we're on to a winner already. Once we've got the basics in place, and that should all be done the night before an event, the chief of race will then find a level 2 coach or higher who will take on responsibility to set the course. And alongside that coach, there will be a course team. Now, what the course team will do is they'll assist the coach with putting the gates out, but they will do the job of side slipping. Now, the course team will get up early. They'll be up the hill if we're on the snow, but even on the mat, they'll be out early, setting the gates, get the gates all laid, make sure the course is running as it should, and then having got the course set, they'll identify who is going to be the course setter throughout the course sliders throughout the race. And people in that course team will be tasked with, throughout the race, every number of competitors just sliding down the course to push the loose snow that's got on top of the course or that's piling up on the outside of the turns, pushing that well off the slope. So a course team of 2 to 4 is good. 4 is great. Craig, you'll have put together many course teams in the past, but yeah, a good crew, because you've got a lapping time of people getting to the top. So then we're looking at someone who's going to operate the start and the starter timer. Now, this person's going to get up early as well, going to go up the hill, set up the start gate and the wand. They're going to be operating that throughout the course of the race, closing the wand as each racer goes through. And they will then work with the chief timer, who will roll out the cabling and take it to the bottom. In some places, there'll be points to connect into on the hill, like at Cairngorm, and indeed at Hill End. We've got points where you can connect the cabling to an inbuilt or underground cable, which runs to the bottom at places like Glencoe on Happy Valley, or indeed at some of the artificial mats like Fir Park. You may have to manually run a cable down the hill, but the chief timer will do all of that. Having got the cabling run, they will then make sure they've got communication. You've probably seen the starter and the timer wearing a headset, and that's so that they, almost in any wind and weather conditions, are able to communicate with each other very clearly, so the timer can say, I'm ready for the next racer, and the starter can send them down. So the chief timer and starter are in comms throughout the event, and the timer will then set up finish ones and get those communicating with each other and ensure that that is connected back to the clock. So the red box here is indicative of a clock that runs the timing at a race. And what happens is when the start gate opens and closes, a pulse will come into the clock with a time. And when someone skis through the beam at the bottom, a pulse will come into the clock, and the clock's clever enough to then deduct the start time from the finish time and get what's called a net time. So that's the job of the timing team, the chief timer and the starter. Once they've got everything set up, they'll go through the standard compliance things we must do, which is to make sure there's padding in front of the finish. And then For the arrival of the racers, we'll need a registration team. Now, I'll just pause for a second here, because at this point, it's worth saying that if you haven't volunteered before, being on the course team and volunteering to slide is a good and easy job to do. But as well as that, the registration and bib issue team will need someone simply to hand out bibs to the right competitors. There's a list there and be helpful, and a smiley face. Again, another great job to step up to and assist on the morning, get all the competitors their bibs. The next role is the start marshal. Now, this is a job just for someone with a loud voice who likes organizing people. The start marshal will be given a start list, and their job quite simply is to get all of the competitors as they arrive into the right order, and then note who is going out of the gate. So if it's bib 25, they're going to be looking for bibs 26, 7, 8, and so on, getting them ready. Now, their job is one of also talking to the competitors to make sure they're prepared, they've got everything done. You know, clearly they've got their bib on as opposed to arriving at the top without it. So the start marshal job is a relatively straightforward job and worthy of stepping up to as a first volunteering role. The next one is the start referee, and referee starts to sound demanding, but the role really of the start referee is to make a note of each racer as they come out of the gate, the actual bib number, and put it onto a sheet. They have a very important sheet of paper that's used later on in the race just to check who's been through the course and gone through the start and indeed gone through the finish. But the start referee job is really one of recording the bib numbers that go out of the start gate. There's a little bit more to it than that, but I'll explain that one as well. So start referee, and then looking down the course, we're going to need some people down the course who are going to be checking that the racers go through the gates in the correct fashion. And these people are called gate judges. Again, with the word judge, it might sound a little bit scary, but your job really is to find a place with a good line of sight of certain gates and quite simply note down the bib numbers as they come down the course who are going through the gates in the right way, and equally note down the bib numbers of the racers that are going through the gates the wrong way. Now, there's a whole discussion there to be had around what's the right way and the wrong way. But in charge of the gate judges, there will be a chief gate judge who, when they help you get in position, will explain what the right line of passage is, or passage through the gates. And if you have any questions, you can speak to people who are in the course team or the course setter to make that clear. But this is quite a straightforward job to undertake as well, the gate judge. So I'm going to explain that one as well tonight. Now, you'll need a gate judge to not be looking after more than 3 or 4 gates, simply because of the spacing between the gates. Sometimes a gate judge may have as many as 6. If it's a large GS course, they may have as few as 3. But yeah, as a gate judge, you have responsibility for a certain number of gates. And clearly you're just noting, as I say, people going through. So that's the gate judges. Then as we get down towards the finish, come on, mouse, do your job. We have a person at the bottom who, if it's necessary, and in some cases it's not, I'll explain why, will be writing down the times that come up on the clock. Now, clocks record the time electronically. It comes out on a printout. It can also be connected to a laptop and go into a system called Ski Pro, which then does all of the calculations. But it's always belt and braces to have a person at the bottom who's writing down the times as well. And that person can be called a backup time recorder, not to be confused with something I'll talk about in a minute, which is called backup timing, but it's worth having a paper copy. That's a straightforward job as well, easy one to step up for. All you're doing is writing down times. As well as the time recorder, we then have this person called a finish referee, and their job is to quite simply clock every bib number that comes through the finish. Now, again, they have slightly more than that to do, and there are some added complexities you can bring into the job, but at the most elementary level, if you're going to step up to race, you could be asked to do this. And if you are going to be a finish ref, simply recording those bib numbers that come through the finish. You may also be asked to just look after the last couple of gates, if there aren't a lot of gate judges, and identify whether people don't go through a gate. But fundamentally, it's people through the finish line. So that's the finish referee role. Then, just in case this timing system fails, we have 2 people at the top and 2 people at the bottom. It may only be 1, who are what we call backup timers. And their job is to hold handheld timing devices. And the ones we use at Snowsport Scotland and we share with the clubs to use are called the Timmy timers, spelled T-I-M-Y, Timmy timers. And these handheld clocks synchronize, but basically the people at the top, when someone goes out the gate, they press a button, and the people at the bottom, when someone comes through a gate, press a button. And these backup timing devices are used if we find there isn't a time that's been recorded by the main timing system. So backup timers you will find at all seeded races and any races of any consequence. If, for example, you're a schools race, these are all extra helpers, which we may not have the privilege of having. We may not have enough bodies, so we may not have backup timing, for example. And if someone, for some reason, fails to get a time, it may be that the timer calls that they get a rerun granted because a time wasn't actually collected. So that's the backup timer role. We then, clicking on, have a race referee. And a referee is usually someone who is a level 2 coach or someone who's experienced as a referee, but their job will be to take the start referee paperwork, the finish referee paperwork, the gate judge paperwork, and they will identify after the run if anybody has been disqualified. And having identified who's been disqualified, that will be posted and made public to everyone, and there'll be 15 minutes if for any reason a competitor has been qualified and for whatever reason they want to challenge that, they have the right to appeal that. And this whole process is what's known as protocol, which takes a little bit of time, but it allows, after each run of the race, it allows the competitors to challenge a call that's been made by a start referee, a gate judge, or a finish referee, if perchance they've been disqualified for what the gate judge or the start or finish referee believes to have been an infringement. So the race referee pulls together all that paperwork and ensures that that protocol paperwork is done. They have, again, a little bit more to do, but that's it at its most elementary level. Then there'll be 2 people who will be working with a laptop. Now, they will take the times from the time recorder. They'll put those into the laptop, possibly manually, or it might be that the clock is connected directly to the laptop, as we would have in a place like Hill End, where the timing is connected directly to the laptop, where it's running Ski Pro software and it does the times. They will do the calculations and they will work out, number 1, the ranking for the race at the end of the day according to the times. But not only that, they will then work out penalty points and then seed points that come from it. So at seeded races, doing calcs can be quite complicated if you've not done it before. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but at club races, it's relatively straightforward. You're really just establishing a ranking for the fastest competitors. So calcs isn't something you might necessarily step up for in the first instance, but if you've a head for software, you're quite good at numbers, then we would love to see people stepping up for that, because we have a shortage of people who really want to step up and get involved with the software and do the calculations. So that's that role. And then there'll be someone doing commentary, and there may well be somebody doing refreshments if it's all been very well organized. And then there'll be somebody who takes the role of what's known as a TD, a technical delegate. Now, technical delegates are appointed by FIS, or trained certainly by FIS, and adhere to the race regulations as laid down by FIS and indeed other authorities. But the TD is there in the capacity there. I've got a Mr. Plod picture here to oversee the event, to make sure it's complying with all the regulations for Alpine racing. But actually they should be very helpful people because they're very knowledgeable. So all told, there's quite a lot of people. And I would understand completely if you went to your first race, saw your child or a friend's child or just when the club saw it happening and thought, oh my goodness me, I can't possibly get involved in this. It looks way too complicated. But actually within all of these jobs, there are some very simple ones that are very accessible and very easy to get involved in. So there's the big picture. I want to talk a little bit about now the start referee and the finish referee jobs and the gate judge jobs, because these are some of the ones that quite often people struggle to fill. Now, for whatever reason, I can't see anyone here. I'm going to pause for a second and just say, if anyone's got any questions, do please either fire them in the chat or just unmute any questions about this plethora of people that are there to run a race at all. Just fire in now if you want to. And while I'm waiting and we have the pregnant pause of no questions, I'll click on. Okay, hopefully all clear so far. So,
yes, Iain, we haven't had any chat so far.
Okay, great. Thanks, Craig. Craig, have you got anything to add?
Maybe at a more basic level, if that all seems quite daunting to a lot of people, there are a number of roles which are really quite simple that get you involved in the race. Iain's already mentioned refreshments, and that's just a case of somebody carrying like a hot, a flask of coffee down to all the gate judges and so on. There's a number of other simple roles. The start marshal, the person who calls people into the start, saying numbers 1, 2, and 3, get yourself ready, come on down. These are really low key roles, but they're essential roles. Added to which, bib sign on when the racers are coming to collect their bibs. These are really simple, non-threatening roles that if you want to learn how races run, I would suggest volunteering for some of these really simple roles, and you then get to learn how some of the medium roles like start referee, finish referee, again, these aren't high pressure roles. They're really quite straightforward, but they may seem daunting to start with. So if you choose a role which you feel comfortable to volunteering at, say bib collection or collecting bibs at the end of the run, it gives you a great feel as to how the race operates. Thanks, Iain.
Brilliant. All right, thanks, Craig. So I'll explain start referee. So it's quite fun being a start referee because you're up there with in the thick of it, really, with each competitor as they're going out the gate. But your job here, as it says, is to track and record each bib number as it goes out the start. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what you would fill in as a piece of paper and a little bit about preparation. Clearly, bring your mobile, most important, you'll have it with you anyway. Rucksack with some extra layers and some supplies. You may not get refreshments from the race organizers, so bringing something with you, but definitely some extra layers. And do bring a pen. You will be issued with a radio, I'm sure, a clipboard and no doubt pencils, and the waterproof start sheet, which is this document in the middle. But endless times people find that pencils break and what have you, so bring a pen with you. Now, the paperwork itself, it looks like there's an awful lot on it to start, but I'm just going to talk through the sections listed on the right hand side. The first bit at the top is simply the event. It's really important people fill in the header here. And one of the reasons for that is it's got a simple, simply asks your name and your mobile number. And if when you hand this in at the end, the referee's looking at this piece of paper and they can't decipher a little bit of writing because you're writing in the cold or whatever, it's really handy if they can just give you a buzz on your mobile. So please do fill in the event. So this weekend, the Lecht Open, this weekend, whatever the dates are, 21, 22, your name, your mobile number, and then you're going to have one of these sheets for each run. Now, it might be that you use the sheet for both the male and female runs, or you may be using a separate sheet for male and then a separate sheet for female. Because everyone's going to have unique bib numbers, that's fine, but never use the same sheet for more than one run. So this would be, let's say, run 1, you will go and get a different sheet for run 2, because what you're trying to do is check who's gone out the gate for one run, get that set of times, and then for the next run later on, absolutely use a different sheet. So circle whichever it is at the top in terms of the run you're on. You can then circle slalom, GS, everyone's going to know that, but ideally fill that in, and if there's any other further categorization, you can put that in. So as it says here, record vertically the racer's bib numbers as they go out the gate. So if 1 goes out the gate successfully, put a 1 and 2 and a 3 and so on. If 4 for some reason does not start and you're expecting them, you would put 4 over here into the did not start. If 5 then did not start, this is a horizontal recording methodology. In this box here, you put 4 and 5 in here, and then you would put 6 back in the next box here, 7, and so on. So you are recording on here every bib number. Now that means when the referee comes to look at your paperwork, they can see who hasn't actually started. And then if for some reason a rerun is called, and I'm not even going to add complexity here by talking about why reruns might be called, but if somebody says, oh, a rerun needs to be granted, and you know that, you can write the bib in here. Now, there will be other people who will be recording those that are granted a rerun as well on other bits of paper. So don't feel alone here. You are recording things on this piece of paper, but remember the starter and the timer will equally be taking the times of people who come down the course. So you have the backup that there are other people who are also recording things at the same time, which should at the end of the day tally with what you've got on this piece of paper. So those that go out the gate in the left box, those that did not start in the top right, anyone who you know has been given a rerun. If you know the reason, write it in. If you don't, it doesn't matter. And then if anyone is called as disqualified, either by the starter or indeed by the referee or indeed by the gate judge, or you hear on the radio someone is called disqualified, then you mark in here anyone that you know has been disqualified and any reasons or comments. It's really helpful if more than 2 people record an incident of disqualification on their bits of paper, because it supports the other person's decision. So if for any reason you're the only person on a course who's written down disqualified, and there's a challenge, then that can bring about some debate. So any instance you have to potentially write in disqualified, do that. But again, don't worry too much about the reasons for that. Follow the instructions of those around you who know what they're doing. If you have any other comments to make, you can make those at the bottom and then sign the bottom and date it. And that is it, really. So at the end of run 1, you should have a nicely completed piece of paper with run 1 circled. And then if we have a pause before run 2, you can go and have a lap and hopefully then come back. On the other hand, you might be going straight into run 2, in which case, new sheet of paper, circle run 2, and you'll be going through the same process again. It does sound a little bit complicated at first, but actually, once you get into the swing of things, you've got a good team around you at the top. You'll have a starter next year, and hopefully whoever's been supporting you as chief of race will be there. Sometimes there are 2 people at the top to take this job, where if one person gets cold, they can go off and get a break. And sometimes for your first time doing it, it's quite nice to shadow someone who's already done it before. But failing that, come and do it in 2s. So that's start referee report. Again, any questions for anyone, just blurt out and I'll just click on.
Ian, hi Ian.
Yep.
Just a question about if there was a rerun. Would you mind just going back one slide, please?
Yeah.
Let's say hypothetically, bib 5 went down and you put it in the vertical column, but then you heard that bib 5 needs a rerun, and I assume bib 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 might be on the vertical one. Could then bib 5 go back in the list further down?
Yes, absolutely. You might put 5 way down here where my mouse is.
Okay.
moving. And the idea is this list, vertical list, is the order in which they came out the start gate.
Yeah.
So if 5 gets their rerun after 17 or even after 30, depending on when they can be slotted in, then you just write it in the column at the point they do it. And that's usually just down to the starter, the start marshal, the organization of those that are there. But they'll try not, if someone's having a rerun for legitimate reasons, and make it too far down the field, because you'll know that once on the snow as opposed to on the mat, clearly there are disadvantages to going skiing a rutted field. But absolutely, you would just put the number in further down the
Thank you.
column.
That's great.
Okay, so I'll leave start referee. I'll move on to gate judge. Key job here is to make sure people are not doing what this skier here is doing, which is putting one ski tip to the wrong side of the pole. There is a piece of paper to fill in, which looks a little bit complicated at first, but again, I'll explain it. Same deal as before. Make sure you got your mobile nicely charged, all the rest of it. Bring some supplies, bring yourself a pen and so on. You're going to be given the clipboard, pencils, but in this case, paperwork you'll be given will be waterproof gate judge sheets. Now you can see on here, there's a grid to fill in and there are these boxes with lots of writing on them, but I'll just talk you through it piece by piece. Again, at the top, same details on the left-hand side, the event, date, name, and mobile. Same details top right, but there's an extra little bit here, which is what gate numbers are you looking after? So if you've got a good chief gate judge who's taking 6 gate judges and putting them down 30 gates and giving them 5 each. He will tell you you've got gates 1 to 5. He will then tell the next person they've got gate 6 to 10 or whatever it might be. Craig, you've got your hand up. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going back to the rerun situation.
Oh, sorry.
If there is a rerun, you have to make sure that that person who's rerunning must start before the very last person in the race. The reason being that if you set off the last person in the race before the rerunner comes back up, all the gate judges and organization think that the race is finished. So it's quite imperative from a safety perspective that the person who's rerunning cannot be the last person going down the run. They have to be at the very least the second last person.
And in a perfect world, if you can get them back up the top quickly and they can run within their category as well, that's quite nice too. But it all just depends on the lap time and the logistics of the event.
Hello, Ian, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, double. Yeah, just on that same subject. Recently, I was in a race where there was a rerun on the run 1. However, run 2 had started. So I ended up writing down the same person twice on run 2.
Yeah, that will have caused confusion. Hopefully the timers will have clocked that it was a rerun for run 1. But will you start referee? Is that Mark?
Yes.
Yeah. Will you start referee? Finish referee. Okay. Hopefully the referee did discern that and actually work that out. But that's a case of when you're handing your paperwork in, if that's something that happens, just make it abundantly clear with some extra notes at the bottom of your document that that's what you encountered. Because that's on your paperwork, that should marry with what's on the start referee's paperwork, and it should marry with what the starter and the timer know to have been the case as well. So, rest assured there will be others who will have clocked that as well. But clearly that's less than ideal because they're then running after the first run may have been closed on the timing clock. So it can make for a few confusions, but ideally, yes, Mark, that wouldn't happen. It would happen during the first run.
Yeah, okay.
Any others? Sorry, I feel I've jumped into gate judge when there are still some questions about that rerun stuff. Any others? Okay, so gate judge stuff at the top. So a good quality or an efficient and well-organized chief gate judge will tell you your gate numbers. Please write your gate numbers in here. That's really helpful to know which ones there are. Craig, you can answer this. What's the most gates you set on an Alpine slalom? Let me ask you that.
Oh my goodness. Depends what age category, to be honest. Because
Yeah.
it depends on the vertical drop that's allowed for each age category, and it depends how many number of turning gates you have in a course.
Let's talk about the biggest. Let's talk about max you're likely to see.
Oh, I can't think off the top of my head. It's about 75 or thereabouts, but that would be for like FIS.
Yeah.
If you get up to World Cup, you're probably talking closer to the absolute max you can set is about 80.
Yeah.
But in Scottish races, you would never ever see that. Even in a Scottish FIS race, you're probably talking a maximum of about 55 to 60 gates in a slalom.
Yeah. And we've probably seen as few as between 30 and 40. Forget the dry mats, but on snow as few as that.
On snow, the minimum you can probably have for, say, under 14s and under 16s race, the minimum is about 41 or 42 gates for slalom.
Okay. And at some of the schools races, I know it's been less, but clearly we're talking below regs levels and below seeded levels there. But those are introductory grassroots stuff. But yeah, so it varies a lot. But the point here is there are quite a lot of gates at some events if you're volunteering at the higher levels. So yeah, your gate judge will give you your gate allocation. So on the left-hand side here, what we have is an example of how to draw a gate diagram. So what it explains is that you need to draw in this box the layout of your gates. So it's suggesting a plus for red gates and a circle for blue gates. So these are red gates, these are blue gates. marking the line that should be skied through the gate, so that's clear, a little @ symbol to indicate where you're standing. If you can draw that, so you've got a clear picture of where you are here as the perfect example. This is before the race when you're up there and in situ. And then ideally you might take that drawing, you might just redraw it in a few of these boxes in readiness for there being a number of skiers who might then ski down. So this is your gate layout here. And then when the racing starts, for each racer, you're going to use these columns here, and you're going to write in the bib number, bib 1, bib 2, bib 3. And then next to each, you can see next to the bib number, it says here, either a tick if they've done a clear run, so it'll be 1 tick through yours, 2 tick, or a D if they're to be disqualified because they go to the wrong side of the gate, or an A if they actually abandon, perhaps they fall, they injure themselves and abandon. So you might have 1 tick, 2 tick, 3 tick, 4 tick, 5, might be a D for disqualification if they didn't pass through the gates or they straddled a gate, or it might be an abandon when you're down at bib 20 or whatever, because they fall, injure themselves, and they just ski out to the side. Some people will straddle and keep skiing. Others will straddle and do the honorable thing and abandon. But if you saw them straddle, you wouldn't write abandon, you would write D for a disqualification because they straddled. So I think the important thing there is to try and understand what is the correct passage. If the gates you've got are very simple ones like this, then fantastic. If you're taken up and you get into in situ and you don't understand the gates you've got, don't worry, that's the point to ask, because you will be shown your position. And I must add as well, your position is not where they tell you to stand, it's where you can get the best view. Really important, you conceal your gates. To stand with the best view, make sure you're not in a full line if someone were to ski out, and you're in a safe place, but get the best view you can, but absolutely be sure that you know what the right line of passage is through the gates, so you know when to DSQ someone and when not to. So it's simply a case of writing the bib number and then the tick or the D or the A down here. Now that's the first little bit. There's a question about climbing. I'll let you answer that in a minute, Craig, that's come in. But I'm just going to finish with the last bit here. If someone infringes and you don't give them a tick, that is the point at which we'd like you to give us more information. If I'm the referee, I want more information than just a D here. I want you to fill in this box here. So at that point, you hopefully would have drawn your gates in a few of these boxes. You would then draw the line that the person did ski. You would write in the bib number here, which was the bib number you put over here. So if 5 got a D, you would put bib 5 here. You would circle that they DSQ'd, or you'd circle that they abandoned, if indeed you have an A for abandon over here. You would state which gate number, and if they were disqualified, you would circle whether it was a miss, or whether it was a straddle. And the idea is you're sharing as much information there and then at the point of it, the incident, as possible, because believe you me, 70 races later, you'll not remember one straddle from one miss, from one bib number to another. So the idea is that you're recording in this box a visual plus the detail of what happened for the summary that's in these boxes here. Now, I know that feels all a little bit complicated at the moment, but actually when you get into the swing of things, generally you're going to get ticks down here, unless someone's set a very, very difficult course or conditions are very challenging. Generally it's ticks. Where you've got a D or an A, that is the only time you'll fill in these boxes on the left-hand side. Now, there's one final thing I'll mention here, just before going back to this question about when a racer is allowed to climb back up again. And that is this question mark. And the idea of the question mark, it says here, please circle the question mark. Sorry, I'll read the sentence properly. If in any doubt over your decision, please circle the question mark, and the referee will seek a supporting opinion where necessary and indeed where possible. But that is to say that you believe the racer did infringe in a way, you have drawn out everything, but do you know what? You're not absolutely 100% sure. Now, the ruling in Alpine racing is that the benefit of the doubt is always with the racer, and it might be that the referee then chooses to disregard your ruling of D for disqualification because there is doubt. On the other hand, they might uphold it, they might put it into the protocol and await the actual racer to come and challenge it in an appeal. They might wait for that, but that would be the referee's decision. But that's what the question mark is there for. It's for you to say, this is what I believe happened, but I'm just not 100% sure, which means that a second opinion may be sought before that will actually be upheld as an actual ruling. So that's the paperwork that needs to be filled in. And at the end of the run 1 or run 2, this piece of paper would be handed back to the chief gate judge, if there is one, or you might all be asked as gate judges to ski to the bottom and give it all in either at the finish line or indeed to the chief of race or indeed to the referee, depending on who's collecting it in, but you should be told that. So that's a bit on the paperwork. Please do ask questions about the paperwork, but Craig, would you like to just pick up on the question about hiking, as we call it, back up?
Yeah, sure. And just to quickly finish off on some of the gate judging side there, if there's somebody above your gate sector or below your gate sector and you notice that racer making an infringement in the course, it really does help the referee and the TD if you maybe add an extra comment that, bib number 37 missed a gate above my sector. It then corroborates any information that comes in the gate sheets, so that if somebody has circled the question mark and they're not quite sure, but the person above the sector or below the sector says, yes, bib 37 missed that gate, it helps corroborate the information. So moving on to when a racer is allowed to climb above a gate and ski on, I'll start with slalom first of all. In slalom, we're typically using what we call single gate slalom now. So if a skier misses a gate completely in slalom, they're allowed to sidestep back up and then completely go around the gate before carrying on. In giant slalom and the other speed events, Super G and downhill, if in giant slalom, if you actually if you miss a gate and ski past the gate and come to a dead stop, you are not allowed to sidestep back up to then go around the gate. However, in GS, if you do miss a gate, but then carry on with your own momentum and don't actually physically stop and circumnavigate the gate, you are allowed to carry on. The reason for that in GS and Super G and downhill is that racers are set off at typically a 30-second time interval. So if that racer were to miss the gate and then step back up to get round the gate, there's a high risk that the skier coming above them is actually going to come on top of them and collide with them. So that's why in GS, Super G and downhill, you're not allowed to climb back up. But in slalom, you are allowed to step back up. I hope that makes it clear.
So Mark, I see that was you again. Lots of good questions. Great. Keep them coming. Questions are good because it just clarifies it for everyone. Okay, so that's gate judge. This might sound a little bit scary, but believe me, there are lots of people to support you. And as Craig says, the key word is corroboration here. Referees really like it when on multiple bits of paper, they get just the same piece of fact or the same facts and information on verifying decisions and rulings by other referees and judges. So moving on to the third role, some tips. Yeah, get a good view, get out and fall line, establish the correct passage and pre-fill a few boxes, and then make sure you understand when you're DSQing. I think they're the things we mentioned. So now the good news about the finish referee role is it's pretty much the same as the start referee role, and you'll see some real similarities in the paperwork. Same blurb on the left-hand side, same blurb on the right-hand side, and largely the same layout of document as for the start referee. The only real difference here is, well, in fact, what is the difference? Not much. You're recording people coming through the finish gate. So vertically down the left-hand side, each bib number that comes through, if they did not finish, i.e. they had abandoned, then the numbers across here, and anyone for whom you know a rerun might well have been granted. And it could be that the timers, particularly if there's a failure in timing and then potentially even a challenge with a backup timing not working, it could be that a rerun is granted. Let's talk about, actually, Craig, it's maybe worth talking a little bit about when reruns are generally granted, you know, for example, impeding and so on and so forth. Do you want to mention a few instances where reruns are granted?
Yeah, sure. Probably the first scenario is if there's maybe course workers working on the course, either to put a gate back in or to shovel out a rut, and the skier comes down and the course workers don't get out of the way. That would be you know, a situation where a racer could stop and say to the officials outside of the course, I would like to request a rerun. In that scenario, they would have to ski outside the course to the finish area, report into the finish, and say, I was impeded in the course by the course workers, you know, helping fix the course, and I would like a rerun. That's one scenario. So it could be a gate out, it could be course workers, you know, shoveling snow. Another random one could be a member of the public strays onto the course. That's highly unlikely because typically the courses are either netted or fenced off, but it's not out with the realms of possibility. They're the typical reasons why somebody could request a rerun. If they just happen to fall or their ski pops off, that is not a reason for a rerun.
Okay, thanks, Craig. There's a couple of other questions which I'm going to let you very eloquently handle there. Can you explain, is there a correct side of the gate you have to hike to? And in which races can judges help indicate where the skier must go?
Yeah, sure. Again, it's only in slalom that you're permitted to hike up round a gate that you've missed. It doesn't really make a difference which side you hike, as long as you completely circumnavigate the pole before carrying on. The gate judges can't provide any physical assistance. For example, if a skier loses a ski at a gate, you know, they maybe hook the gate and their ski pops off. The gate judge can't physically, you know, bring the ski back up to them. All the gate judge can do is say, yes, you've gone all the way round, you can carry on, or no, you haven't gone all the way round, you must keep going round before you carry on. I see there's a second question there, which I'm just reading. How might you find out if someone did not finish, abandon, if they don't ski through the finish? That's actually recorded on the finish referee's card, and it's actually a really useful piece of information for the referee or the TD who's actually preparing the protocol. And the protocol is the list of racers who are potentially going to be disqualified. So if the person does not finish or abandons, they will not have passed through the finish line. So the finish referee will have a section on his report that says did not finish, and you can then report that bib number 5 did not cross the finish line, i.e. they did not finish. And it helps the referee and the TD to produce the disqualification protocol very quickly.
And Craig and Andy as well, it probably worth knowing here that the finish referee is on comms with the start referee and will be aware who is on course. And generally, if there is an abandon and someone coming out of the course, that will be made verbally known to everyone over the radio. And they may well hear about someone abandoning well up the course without line of sight of that. And it may well be they record it without necessarily even seeing that racer, but generally a racer will come down the side of the course anyway, so they'll be aware of it at that point. But when they've been aware that the next expected bib number is, should we say, 2 numbers up, that'll be the point as well at which it confirms it, so they can record it on the piece of paper.
Also, a good referee and TD will take, now typically the referee and TD will position themselves partway down the course, and a good referee and TD will also take a note of any abandons or did not finishes that they see themselves, so that again that corroborates any information that the start is relaying to the finish, and also the information that the finish referee is recording on his finish referee's report.
Great. Okay, so that just about summarizes the detail of those three roles. I just want to wrap up a little bit here by saying, if you're going to get involved, everything we say applies both to ski and indeed to Matt. This is Scottish Champs image here on the left. So really, course team, bib issue, start marshal, as Craig says, helping with refreshments if need be. So just to remind you, the sliding for the course team, your bib issue, or helping in the registration desk, going up and being bossy with competitors at the start, and being start marshal and getting them all in order, being the start referee or gate judge or finish referee, which involves that paperwork, all good and relatively straightforward jobs. But if you've any apprehension about doing these jobs, even stepping forward and saying, I'm happy to shadow and actually work as a backup for someone can be helpful, because if they've got a full crew and they know you've stepped forward and said, I'll help, what it means is people get a little bit of relief rather than standing on the side of a cold mountain race course all day. They can get off for a break, and you can just take over for a little while once you got comfortable with what the role is. And what I want to mention is there's quite a few resources. I've shown you things on screen here that will actually help. So I'm going to just minimize this and actually just show you on the Snow Sport Scotland website. I just want to know, can everyone still see my screen? Craig, can you still see a shared screen or not? You can. Okay. So I'll just go to Snow Sport Scotland website. Here it is. On the website here, just snowsportscotland.org, there is along at the right-hand end, there is a resources section. Under resources, there are competition resources. And under competition resources, when it brings up the page, if I scroll down, it's got Alpine race resources. And inside there, you can actually see what the Alpine race pack, which contains PDFs of all of the paperwork, you can actually link to that here and open up a folder which has the start referee, the finish referee, the chief gate judge card. I can get my mouse to move to the right place. The gate judge card itself, the front, the back of it, all of these documents which you can then click on and you can download onto your own desktop. You can download the whole lot if you like, have a little look at them. If your kids are racing and you want to understand what a protest form looks like, see what a referee's report it looks like, by all means do that. They're all here, all free to grab and download as PDFs and have a look at those. So that's in that Alpine race pack under competition resources on the resources section of the website. But added to that as well, there are some online training videos. And if I just click on this for a second, these can be quite helpful. We've got all sorts of stuff in here, off-piste, backcountry skiing, coaching, you name it. But under Alpine racing, we've got an introduction to course setting, seeding systems, because they take a bit of understanding if you haven't got involved with those, introduction to volunteering as an Alpine race official. And that covers, you can see the images, what I've got here. A lot of the slides I've used tonight, we used when we did the presentation, which we recorded here. And we had Paul Trainer and we had James Paxton. We had a few people just running through the roles there. So there are videos you can watch, but there's actually quite a good one here from the, sorry, get rid of that, the USSA, which is a gate judge training video that does go into some detail, showing you some imagery and videos of different lines of gates, and it can be quite helpful for understanding correct passage. But do feel free to have a look at indeed any of these videos we've got in here on the resources side of things. I'm just trying to think whether there are any other resources worthy of mention. Those are probably the main ones at the moment. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and just see if we've got any other questions. If I can stop sharing at this point. Stop sharing.
Yeah, Ian, there's just a question in the chat.
Yep.
Can this be shared with clubs for parents who couldn't attend this?
Yeah, I've got it on record, and absolutely we'll make sure the recording's available. We'll put it here into the library, and I'll actually share it with everyone who attended. No problem at all. But questions? Anyone got any questions at all about anything that we've covered there in the presentation?
I'd just like to add a really useful thing for parents to get involved with is some of the coursework, and that's part of the course team that would be involved in a race. On any general training day, especially on snow, if parents come along, ask to slide a course, to help out the coursework, coaches love that. I added to which, coaches can help show you how to drill gates. It's also a popular thing with parents learning how to use a drill and how to place gates. There are the right way and the wrong way to slide courses. So these are things you can get involved with during a normal snow training day, and that will give you great experience that if you then volunteer to help with a race, to be part of the course team, you've then got the knowledge and the skills how to prepare a course properly.
So with great excitement, I'd like to think Mark confirm everything's going ahead this weekend for the races at the Lech. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, fingers crossed. They open the roads. The road's still closed. It's been closed since Monday, I think.
So if anybody even has the inclination to get excited about this, and Mark's on the call, touch base with either Mark or Heather Cowie, who is chief of race or chief of champs, I think, up there. Absolutely be brilliant to get anyone who's been on the call, or indeed anyone else you think might be keen to step up and get involved. We somehow need to engender and encourage more people to step up. And if anyone's got an interest in Alpine calculations and got a head for laptops and numbers and software, we'd love to hear from you. Do please ping me an email, because we'll definitely do a session on that coming up over the next few weeks. We need to build some more expertise in that. We've got some really good people, but there's very few of them. But I don't think I have much more to add, unless anyone wants to raise any more questions, or unless, Craig, you've got anything else to say. And I hope it's been useful for those of you that have been on.